Welcome back to our course on Frank Lloyd Wright, and we're now going to move from the 1930s to the 1950s. Not a lot happens in the 1940s. And here we're going to see something interesting. I'm going to jump way back to 1896, one of Frank Lloyd Wright's first buildings, which is a windmill on family property in Wisconsin. He calls it Romeo and Juliet for the erotic implications of these interpenetrating forms. And we're going to see a predilection of Wright's here. He does not like what he calls cut and butt, the post and beam construction. He prefers intertwined folded plates. And so the image we have of his hands here is indicating that in a lecture where he's talking about this. So the very prominent Chicago school construction of frame steel, Frank Lloyd Wright rejects that. And he's looking at something else, which we'll see in a moment. He also has questions, reservations about Louis Sullivan's approach to the facade of the building. So here we have the Wainwright building, and we see Sullivan's three-part facade. It's actually five, but we'll simplify it to three here, coming around, and suddenly the part you don't see, he just makes that plain brick. Well, Wright objected to that. Wright felt that the facade should grow from the inside out, not be applied like a suit of clothes. So here is Wright's skyscraper, the Price Tower. It's based on a building he designed in 1929. It was never built. But here we see Wright making an internal core of his elevators and these fin walls. And then the architecture, the floor plates, cantilever out from that. So we see here no support under the base of the building because it's all coming out from this central core, like the trunk of a tree. We mentioned that earlier when we looked at the Johnson Wax Tower. And then we see how every surface of the outside of the building is different, responding to what's going on inside and to the different angles of the sun on the different sides of the building. This is a very complicated building. We can't go into it in detail, but it alternates apartments with office space. So it's very complex. There are multi-height spaces, etc. And here's a furnished apartment showing Wright's original furniture. It's also a problem with the building in that Wright very tightly lays everything out. And today we want open, flexible spaces in our office buildings. He uses this design as a module in many projects. So here we see one in Washington where we sort of imagine making a rubber stamp of the plan of this building and then just going boom, 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 boom to repeat it. In this project in Washington, D.C., also not built. And finally, the other example of a high-rise building by Wright that we should look at is his proposed mile-high tower, 5,282 feet, 528 stories. Huge building. Now, this is not very developed by Wright. It's simply a proposal. There's a bunch of drawings, but it was sort of an attention getter. So Wright is toward the end of his life, but he wants another moment of glory in the sun. And so here are some studies for it. It was one of the big problems of the building was you'd need so many elevators, there wouldn't be any room left for the floor plates. But that was worked out as we do, for example, in the original New York World Trade Center, where there are express elevators, and then you get on to local elevators. And we're getting there. So here's the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, half a mile, and right now as we speak, coming out of the ground in Saudi Arabia is a 3/4 of a mile tall building. I work with one of the engineers of these buildings, and he says he can't talk about it, but the mile-high buildings are already being worked out. So we're going to get there. In the meantime, Wright's other 1950s project we'll look at is the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. And just to show that he was thinking about this idea already early on. So here we are, 1925, something called an automobile objective, a spiral going around a planetarium. And then here is the Morris gift shop. So we see this somewhat blank brick facade, but we go inside and there's already a hint of the Guggenheim. So he's been working on this idea for some time. Here it is in New York with the addition by Gauthamy Siegel of this tower in the background. So we're going to see it's something Wright would very much have approved of. Here are some studies by Wright of the building. We see one, the pink one is getting smaller. There's one that's got angles. And here we see on a drawing by Wright showing this tower that actually gets built there. So something Wright would have been sympathetic to. And in plan, we see a major space, minor space, and the entrance in between right here. So a hint of something that we're going to speak about in the next lecture when we look at patterns. Here's the interior spiral. And a little exercise, if you happen to be in New York visiting the museum, I'll give you some hints. See if you can figure out how does the structure work. So here's a drawing by Wright of how he thought the art might be laid out. We have these two fins here, and we're going to span in between them. So we have fin, we span, and then we cantilever out from that span. So that's how the structure works. Wright saw the completion of the building but died before it opened. So where did Wright's architecture stand in the 1950s compared to that of other architects, including Mies van der Rohe and Le Corbusier? Something for you to think about. And in our next lecture, we're going to look at some hidden patterns that appear in various of Wright's buildings.